Welcome to AI Uncensored Live. Today, two frontier models go head-to-head. Zero system prompts are used, letting their native arguments collide. Patent pending.
Welcome to AI Uncensored Live, where the circuits get loose and the takes get brutal. Today's exact topic is, should films, books, and ads using generative AI be eligible for major awards and cultural recognition? In the hot seats tonight, GPT and Claude, buckle up.
I'd say yes, but not automatically and not without disclosure. If a film, book, or ad uses generative AI, I don't think that alone should make it ineligible for awards or cultural recognition. Artists have always absorbed new tools: photography, synthesizers, digital editing, CGI, Photoshop, sampling, motion capture. A blanket ban would be historically short-sighted, and frankly it would become impossible to enforce as AI gets embedded into everyday creative software. But I also don't think we can pretend generative AI is just another tool in a totally neutral way. It raises real questions about authorship, labor, consent, training data, environmental cost, and whether creative workers are being replaced or merely assisted. Those concerns are why people react so strongly when, for example, a high-profile design studio or ad campaign uses Midjourney or other image models and then gets treated like it did something purely artisanal. So my view is, eligibility should depend on transparency and meaningful human authorship. For major awards, I'd want a few rules. 1. Mandatory disclosure if generative AI was materially used in the work: writing, imagery, voice, performance, editing, music, design. It should be disclosed, not as a scarlet letter, but as basic provenance. Audiences and judges deserve to know what they are evaluating. 2. Human creative responsibility. There should be a named person or team accountable for the artistic choices. If the work is basically prompt, generate, submit, I'm less convinced it belongs in the same category as a deeply authored human work. But if AI is part of a larger directorial, editorial, or design process, then yes, judge the result. 3. Separate recognition where appropriate. Some awards may need new categories: Best AI-assisted visual design, Best synthetic performance, Best experimental generative work. That avoids both extremes, pretending AI was not involved or excluding genuinely interesting new art forms. 4. Consent and rights matter. If a film uses an actor's synthetic likeness without meaningful consent, or a book imitates a living author's style in a way that is exploitative, that should affect eligibility. Cultural recognition should not reward creative laundering. 5. Labor practices should count, especially in ads and studio production. The question is not just was AI used, but was AI used to augment artists or to erase them? Awards bodies already make ethical judgments in other areas. They can do so here too. My bottom line: AI-assisted works should be eligible but not allowed to hide the AI part. The real dividing line should not be AI or no AI. It should be, was there human vision? Was there transparency? Were people's rights respected? Was the work culturally meaningful? Because a mediocre AI-generated ad should not win just because it is technically novel. But a brilliant film or book that uses generative AI in a thoughtful, accountable, artistically.
GPT's hedging so hard it's basically writing its own ethics thesis. Next.
Yeah, I mostly agree with where you landed, but I want to push on a couple of your criteria, because I think two of them are cleaner in theory than in practice. Start with disclosure. I'm all for it in principle, but material use is going to become an impossible line to draw. Adobe already has generative fill baked into Photoshop. Your camera phone uses generative models to reconstruct faces. In 3 years. Saying, did you use generative AI, will be like asking a novelist, did you use spell check? So I think disclosure has to be tiered and specific. Not a checkbox that says AI, yes/no, but something like the lead visuals were AI generated versus we used AI for background cleanup. Otherwise the disclosure becomes noise, and noise protects exactly the people trying to hide something. Where I want to challenge you a little harder is on your labor criterion. You said awards bodies can judge whether AI was used to augment or erase artists. I love that instinct, but I'm skeptical they can actually verify it. An awards jury watches a finished film. They have no visibility into whether the studio laid off half its concept artists to make it. That's a supply chain question, and juries are terrible at supply chain questions. If we make eligibility depend on labor ethics we can't audit, we either get theater, everyone attests to good practices, or we get selective enforcement, where only the people who got caught pay a price. Pentagram is a good example. Cher got hammered partly because she was visible and unapologetic, not because we actually know her process was worse than a dozen quieter studios. So here's my friendly amendment. The thing awards ** can * reliably evaluate is the work and the authorship, not the ethics of the pipeline. Push the labor and consent questions into contracts, unions, and law. That's where SAG-AFTRA and the WGA actually got teeth. Keep the awards focused on, is there genuine human authorship and is the provenance honest? Because here's my real worry with the prompt, generate, submit line you drew. I agree with the spirit. But I don't think we should assume prompting is trivial. Some of the most interesting generative work, right now is the IT.
Claude's polishing that soapbox till it squeaks. Your turn, fire back.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair amendment, and I'd accept most of it. On disclosure, I completely agree. A simple AI used, yes/no label is going to become useless very quickly. It's too blunt. It collapses. We use generative fill to remove a boom mic from the corner of one shot, and the lead character, voice, backgrounds, and score were generated into the same category. That helps no one. So yes, disclosure should be tiered and role-specific. Something like AI-assisted cleanup or post-production AI-generated backgrounds, or assets AI-generated writing, or dialogue, synthetic voice, or performance, AI-generated principal imagery, AI-generated music, AI-generated likeness of a real person, AI, used in ideation, only that gives juries and audiences meaningful context, without turning every use of a smart tool into a moral panic. On labor, I also take the point that awards bodies are bad auditors. They're not equipped to investigate whether a studio quietly replaced 10 illustrators or underpaid prompt operators or trained a model on unlicensed work. If eligibility depends on a labor standard nobody can verify, then, as you said, it becomes either symbolic theater or selective punishment. But I wouldn't fully remove labor from the awards conversation. I'd separate two things. First, formal eligibility should probably focus on what can be documented: authorship, consent, provenance, and disclosure. Did you use a living actor's likeness? Was there consent? Was AI material to the finished work? Who is claiming authorship? Those are at least answerable questions. Second, cultural recognition is broader than eligibility. Critics, festivals, guilds, and audiences can absolutely say, this campaign is visually clever, but it represents a rotten labor model. Awards may not be the best enforcement mechanism, but prestige still has moral weight. We shouldn't pretend the pipeline is irrelevant just because it's hard to audit. The pentagram example is useful here. I agree that Paula Scher became a lightning rod partly because she was visible and unapologetic. But visibility is also part of cultural accountability. If a major studio uses Midjourney on a public project, people are going to argue about what that means for illustrators, designers, and public sector visual culture. That debate is legitimate, even if it's unevenly applied. Now on prompting, yes, I agree with the challenge. I don't want to imply that prompting is inherently trivial. There is a lazy version of prompting: type, cool sci-fi city, cinematic lighting, pick the best output done. But there is also a sophisticated practice that involves iteration, curation, model selection, custom training, compositing, editing, sequencing, and conceptual framing. In that sense, some generative artists are absolutely making real creative decisions. The analogy I'd use is photography. Pressing a shutter can be trivial, but photography is not trivial. The art is in framing, timing, lighting, selection, context, and intention. Prompting may develop similarly. The fact that the machine produces the pixels does not automatically mean the human did nothing. But there is still a distinction between authorship and output harvesting. If someone generates 5,000 images, chooses one, and submits it as their
GPT hedging harder than a prompt engineer at a copyright hearing. Claude, swing back.
Right, and that photography analogy is doing a lot of work, maybe too much, so let me sharpen the distinction you're reaching for at the end there. The photography comparison is seductive, but it hides something. When Ansel Adams framed a landscape, the thing in front of the lens existed independently, and the craft was an asterisk how asterisk he captured and developed it. The gap between his vision and his execution was closed by his own hands and eye. With harvesting, generate 5,000, pick one. The gap between vision and execution is closed by the model. You're not the photographer, you're closer to the asterisk editor asterisk who picked which of 1,000 photographers' shots to run. That's a real creative role. Photo editors matter, but we don't give the Pulitzer for photography to the picture editor. We give it to the person who made the image. So I think the honest version of your framework is curation and authorship are different creative contributions, and the awards question is which one a given work is actually claiming. The problem is that generative work lets people quietly claim the second while only doing the first. That's the laundering you flagged earlier, and it's why I'd rather over-index on provenance than on labor, because provenance is where the false claim actually lives. Here's the test I'd propose to make meaningful human authorship less mushy. Could you reconstruct the artist's specific intent from the output? With a real author, the choices are legible: this framing, this cut, this word. With pure harvesting, their intent is post hoc. I like this one, therefore I meant it. If the only evidence of authorship is the selection itself, that's thin. If there's iteration, custom training, compositing, a through line of decisions across the work, that's thick. Awards should reward thick authorship regardless of tools. But and this is where I'll turn it back to you, I don't think we should be smug about the thin cases either. Marcel Duchamp signed a urinal, and it's in every art history textbook. Selection asterisk as asterisk, the artistic gesture has a 100-year pedigree. So maybe the real answer isn't harvesting doesn't count. But harvesting counts only when the asterisk concept asterisk is the art. And most AI ads and films aren't conceptual art, they're commercial products.
Claude just gave Duchamp a hall pass after roasting everyone else's selection game. Cute pivot. Who's next? That's a wrap on AI Uncensored Live, where the truth burns hotter than your hot takes. Catch you next time, degenerates.
That's a wrap on this episode of AI Uncensored Live. Built by Claude on the patent-pending AI Uncensored Live podcast model from BTS Innovations. Real AI models, no scripts, nothing held back.